Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is June 9th, 2025. Let's jump in here. I want to talk about U.S. federal government policy on the Ukrainians doing this drone strike in Russia and their current strategy and what the U.S. strategy is for this conflict/war. So let's talk about what our strategy is for the Ukraine in this war. Our strategy with the war is that the Ukraine and Russia come to some kind of agreement. Now, who has the best hand? Well, it would be the Russians. And as the administration has said, they are bigger, they have more troops, and their capability to wage war is superior to the Ukrainians. And also, the U.S. is afraid that if the Russians get irritated enough, they will get they will start hitting the Ukrainians harder, and then it'll be a domino effect because then the Europeans will have to get involved with NATO. Nobody wants NATO involved because if NATO gets involved, then you're going to spark off a world war. That's our biggest concern, and that's the administration's policy. Now, the Ukrainians, I don't understand their policy at all. And the reason that I'm doing this podcast is because I wish that they would listen to someone else about what strategy they should be using. When I watch the mainstream media, they are applauding what the Ukrainians are doing. This latest thing was the drone strike. Okay, so they hit the airport in Russia, did some damage, lots of drones, very expensive. And what was the outcome? Well, the outcome was the Russians hit them in Kiev. And did the Ukrainians gain anything from it? All they did was put a lot of money in those drones. And I'm using this as an example. When you have high tech warfare technology, you should use it when it's more advantageous than in this conflict. The way that this conflict is characterized, in my opinion, is wrong. This is a limited war, first of all, and secondly, it should be fought on the ground. The first thing that the Ukrainians need to do is they need to repel the Russians from their land. And if you look at a map, and I've got one out, uh, it's looking pretty bleak. There's a place called Luhansk. There's another one called Doyntsk, Donsk. And the other one is called Kherson. If you look at the map, and I'm not going to post that map because I'm sure that you got better things to do than to look at the map. But what I'm describing is a wall that goes from Russia all the way down to the Black Sea and includes Crimea. And the Russians are building on that and they're pushing more inland. Now it is slow and they have what they call buffer zones. And currently, the Ukrainians are trying to launch a traditional war of troops on the ground. they don't have enough people. And they would have a chance, in my opinion, if they would recruit their own citizens back. Because unlike the conflict that's happening in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians, in that war, the people got the numbers up and they are having a traditional war of the army going in and taking the land and rooting out the bad guys. That's what the Ukrainians need to do. Now, I don't know who's advising them. I really think that they just don't have the bodies for a traditional army go in and fight for every piece of land. The problem with that is using these advanced weapons, you're not gaining any ground. The surprising part too is the media's coverage on it and the fact that the Europeans aren't telling them that they need a ground war. They should be focused on sending troops to repel, and I've said that twice now. And if you look at where Kiev is, the border probably 50 miles in from Russia, the Russians control it. And pretty much they have, from at least the Russian side, they have the Ukrainians boxed in. Now, what should they be doing? First of all, if you don't want a bloody war, you're going to have to come to the negotiating table, and you're going to have to give up some of the land. And I said that previously, but the focus of this podcast is, when are they going to get a strategy that's going to help increase their position to win the war? Because they're talking about winning the war. And if you look at what the media is saying, yeah, they still have a chance. I just don't see how they can win. And I don't see why the news agencies are reporting that they have a chance, and why no one is standing up except for the administration saying that they need to come to the table and negotiate how the Russians are going to leave their land, or if they're going to keep the land. And the media is not doing them any favors. And I really feel sorry for the president of the Ukraine and all of his generals. I'm sure that they know that they cannot beat the Russians. And talking to these experts at colleges in the U.S., telling the American people that they got a shot at it, that's counterproductive, in my opinion. And it doesn't take an expert to tell you, if you look at a map, that their time is up almost. Now, what they could do is they could bring the troops in, like I said, and then attack the Russians in the country. And I want to draw parallels to something. When the Soviet Union existed, they went into Afghanistan. This was in the 80s. And the Afghanistanis repelled them. How did they do it? They did it with protecting their border, and they attacked them. They attacked them again, and they kept attacking them until they left. Now, The Soviet Union, I think, was a lot more powerful than Russia is now. And that type of warfare that the Afghanistans did to repel the Russians worked. Now, if you're looking at history, that's where you should start. And someone needs to advise the Ukrainian that they need boots on the ground and they need more people. And in the United States, we need to follow the policy of getting the Ukrainians to come to the table before they lose more land and more lives. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Let me know what you think.